A shocking event happened in the Pacific Ocean. The US F18 fighter jet has detected an unknown object approaching closed airspace. Ground-based radar stations report that the enemy is a huge nuclear bomber, possibly aimed at sinking a U.S. aircraft carrier. What do you think the pilot of the F-18 did next? What would you do in his position? Write your thoughts in the comments. For now, let me explain the situation in a little more detail. The hero of the story today was on a routine flight ensuring security in the Pacific Ocean region. Nothing portended trouble. But at one moment, everything changed when a Russian reconnaissance plane appeared on the horizon, heading towards the USS Ronald Reagan aircraft carrier in the Pacific, which seemed to be the target of the enemy. But why didn't the aircraft carrier attack the enemy? Where is the entire arsenal of its missiles and lasers? The fact is that the aircraft carrier was inactive due to a minor breakdown, and while the engineers were repairing it, most of its systems were shut down. A very favorable moment to attack, isn't it? However, a lone F-18, which was already in the airspace, stood up to defend the aircraft carrier.
F-18 is by far the most capable aircraft that these young pilots have ever flown in.
The pilot responded quickly to the alarm. It was the moment he'd been training for all these years. Alarm received. Urgent interception. The coordinates have been transmitted to your display. Follow the instructions. The commander's voice came through the headphones. The pilot quickly leveled his F-18 and headed toward the enemy aircraft at a maximum speed of over 1,240 miles per hour. The F-18's radar, equipped with advanced tracking systems, was able to recognize the enemy aircraft 60 miles before they met. Thanks to this, our pilot was able to realize that the enemy was flying a Tu-142 bomber, which is a very, very dangerous aircraft. With a wingspan of 160 feet and a weight of more than 90 tons, it can carry a huge arsenal of weapons, including 4 types of torpedoes, anti-ship mines, several types of bombs, most importantly the X-35 missile, which with one hit would send even an aircraft carrier measuring 1,000 by 600 feet to the bottom. Realizing what the enemy is capable of, our pilot's tension was growing, but he had to act in cold blood. He tracked all the movements of the Russian plane, trying to understand its intentions, and the F-18 technology helped him in this.
Well, of course, the F-18 has smart technology built into almost all of the weapon systems. Almost all of the hardpoint pylons and launchers are smart technology.
The Tu-142 has a speed of only 430 miles per hour, and realizing that the speed difference was not on its side, the enemy decided to use dangerous maneuvers to confuse our hero. However, even this was not possible because the F-18 has compact dimensions, almost 3 times smaller than a bomber, and its maneuverability is much higher. The enemy had only one thing to do. The bomber began to slow down, which could mean that it was preparing to drop a bomb on the USS Ronald Reagan, which could do nothing because of a breakdown. The F-18 pilot realized that the situation was becoming increasingly tense and unpredictable. Suddenly, the Russian plane abruptly changed course, heading towards the aircraft carrier. The F-18 pilot's heart beat even faster, and he instantly switched his aircraft to pursuit mode, trying not to lose sight of the target. The Tu-142 is changing course, approaching the aircraft carrier. I'm in pursuit, the pilot reported to the command center. The enemy began to perform complex maneuvers, trying to confuse the pursuing fighter. The F-18 pilot, relying on his skills and training, skillfully repeated each maneuver, and his AIM-120 anti-aircraft missiles were ready to attack their target. Given the flight speed of 1,860 miles per hour, the missile would have destroyed the bomber in 3 seconds.
In the past, you may have needed, a whole strike from a carrier to be able to do that. Now you just do it with one airplane.
Close contact established, requesting further instructions, the pilot reported. The command center responded immediately. Don't let it get close to the aircraft carrier. If necessary, be prepared to repel the threat. The F-18 leveled off with the Tu-142, sending a clear signal that any further approach would be considered aggression. The Russian plane began to slowly retreat, still performing maneuvers to test the reaction of the American fighter. It became clear that the enemy was obviously heading away from the aircraft carrier and the territory it was guarding. The F-18 pilot continued to pursue until he was sure that the Tu-142 was indeed leaving the danger zone. The Russian plane is leaving our sector. I'm returning to the base, the pilot said. It was a difficult and tense moment that would have spoiled anyone's nerves. but our hero stood his ground and managed to drive the enemy away. The amazing collision between the Navy pilot and the Russian reconnaissance bomber was over. The consequences of the event were still to be seen. The main thing is that he managed to drive the enemy away and preserve the secrecy of the technologies transported on the USS Ronald Reagan. After such an ambiguous encounter with a Russian spy plane, the pilot immediately reported the incident to his superiors. In a detailed report, he described the entire situation, including the maneuvers he and the Russian aircraft performed and the potential threats that could have arisen from the aggressive behavior of the Tu-142. The management listened carefully and recorded all the details, realizing the importance of this incident for future operations. All aspects were considered, from response time to coordination with the command center. The experts analyzed the behavior of the Russian aircraft and tried to identify possible causes and targets of its maneuvers. The results proved that the system worked effectively and all participants acted in accordance with the protocols. However, the incident also revealed several areas that could be improved to prevent similar situations in the future. For example, it was decided to improve patrolling of water areas, as well as to deploy additional groups of interceptor aircraft and destroyers capable of shooting down enemy targets. In addition, it was decided to launch a program to improve F-18 fighters.
The Super Hornet is a capability to draw from more advanced technology, and then also the stuff that was designed for the Super Hornet backfitted.
The incident became an important lesson for all parties involved. The U.S. Navy has decided to strengthen training programs for pilots and radar operators to increase their preparedness for unexpected situations. In addition, it was decided to intensify diplomatic efforts to establish clear international agreements and rules for the use of airspace to reduce the likelihood of similar incidents in the future. The information about the actions of the Russian aircraft were transmitted through diplomatic channels for further discussion at international forums. Reflecting on the lessons learned from this shocking encounter, it's clear that such incidents can have a significant impact on international relations. They emphasize the importance of communication, vigilance, and readiness to address complex airspace security issues. First, this incident demonstrated the need for clear and effective ways to interact between military forces. The ability to respond promptly to potential threats and coordinate the actions of all participants plays a key role in preventing such situations and ensuring the security of allies. Continuous improvement of training and procedures helps maintain a high level of pilot readiness and professionalism. Second, such events emphasize the importance of diplomacy and international cooperation. In addition, the incident reminded us of the need for continuous modernization and improvement of surveillance and security technologies. The U.S. Navy and other military forces should continue to invest in advanced monitoring and defense systems to detect and respond to potential threats in a timely manner. Such situations remind us to be prepared for the unexpected, and even more importantly, to find ways out in time, as the F-18 pilot did, whose work we can only be proud of. But in fact, this is not an isolated case. This is not the first time that NATO forces have had to intercept Russian aircraft on their territory. In the first quarter of 2024, the number of NATO fighter jets intercepting Russian aircraft approaching the airspace of the alliance's allies increased by 25%. In 2023, the number of such flights exceeded 300. Usually, all such missions take place around Kaliningrad. But this time it was different. The Su-24MR Fencer E took off right under Finland's nose from the Gromavo Air Base and headed for the NATO exercise site. Even experienced U.S. Navy operators did not immediately realize what had happened. This unusual situation required a quick and confident response. A pair of legendary F-22s, piloted by the best pilots of the U.S. Army, took off from the Amari base in Estonia to intercept a Russian spy. The Russian plane was detected thanks to the RQ-4 Global Hawk drone, which was on duty off the coast of Estonia.
The Global Hawk represents a huge tool in its ISR fleet to provide intelligence data to the people on the ground.
It is a rather unusual situation when a reconnaissance UAV detects an airborne target earlier than a ground-based radar.
Paving a new way for the future, a new breed of pilots coming through.
But it should be noted that the Su-24MR is not a typical fighter. This is a reconnaissance version of the Su-24 strike aircraft, which was developed in the USSR in the 1970s. It's equipped with a wide range of intelligence equipment, including radar stations, optoelectronic systems, and electronic intelligence systems. This allows it to carry out both photographic reconnaissance and data collection on enemy electronic systems. With a maximum speed of 960 miles per hour and a range of 380 miles, it can quickly penetrate deep into enemy territory and disappear unnoticed with the information it's collected. Despite the age of the plane, it almost managed to reach Klaipeda unnoticed. The F-22 pilots were surprised by the brazenness and skill of their enemy, so they prepared for any eventuality. The Su-24, obviously realizing its real capabilities and the approaching threat, was not going to fail the mission and took a risk that could potentially start World War III. The likely target of Russian intelligence is the flagship of the 6th Fleet of the Navy, the Mount Whitney amphibious assault ship. Given the amount of state-of-the-art equipment on board this ship, finding out at least some details about it's a great success for the enemy. Particularly interesting are the radar systems. There are 3 of them on the Mount Whitney. Thanks to them, the Su-24MR will be targeted by the Sea Sparrow missile before it can take any photos.
So the benefits are manyfold. The active duty Navy is able to operate the ship with a reduced number of active duty personnel.
The F-22 pilots must protect the Mount Whitney at all costs, so they're prepared for the worst-case scenario. The F-22 has a wide arsenal of weapons, including internal bays for air-to-air and air-to-ground missiles, as well as the M61A2 Vulcan automatic cannon. Internal compartments allow to maintain the stealth characteristics of the aircraft during combat missions, so the Russian pilot still does not notice the Raptor behind him. The Su-24MR carries air-to-air, air-to-ground missiles, and KAB-500 or KAB-1500 guided bombs, which are particularly dangerous for U.S. ships. Since most of the weapons of the Su-24 are located under the wing, the main task of the F-22 is to approach and make sure there's no danger to the flagship. Finally, the Raptor pilot sees the enemy with the naked eye. Apparently, the pilot of the Su-24MR has also noticed him, but so far he's not taken any action. When the F-22 pilots get close enough to see the Russian Army spy, they realize that it was not carrying heavy weapons. After exhaling, the pair of pilots began the usual procedure of escorting the enemy aircraft to ensure a safe end to the incident. Both F-22s take up positions on the sides of the Su-24MR and use all possible methods to make it clear that the Russian spy's mission has failed. However, the Russian pilot does not think so and performs a maneuver that could potentially start a war. Gaining cruising speed, it suddenly approaches the wing of an F-22 and dives down to escape pursuit. One can interpret such actions in different ways, but professionals like the Raptor pilots always keep a calm mind. Usually, the pilot must immediately report such events to the commander. Having almost lost one of the most advanced fighters, the command decided to escort the Russian plane at a safe distance. The F-22 pilots successfully completed their mission and returned to the Emory base without losses. The Soviet plane of the 70s is objectively unable to withstand the latest U.S. fighters. After using his only advantage, surprise, the Su-24MR pilot made the only possible decision to land in the Kaliningrad region. Without receiving any important intelligence, it's worth talking about the possible return of the Russian plane by the same route, for which the U.S. Air Force will be more prepared than this time. However, Russia still has many ways to test the attentiveness of NATO air forces. Given the rapid increase in the number of air intrusions, our pilots will definitely be out of work. Such emergencies are always subject to detailed analysis by the U.S. Army leadership. That's why the pilots provide a detailed minute-by-minute report on the course of the incident, its causes, and solutions immediately upon return. The possibility of damage or even loss of the F-22 is considered an extraordinary event, as no F-22 has ever been scratched by the enemy so far. Unfortunately, the decisions made on this situation remained behind closed doors. But we can guess that next time it'll not be possible to catch the NATO military off guard. Given the increasing number of illegal intrusions into NATO airspace and the aggressiveness of the enemy's actions, we should not rule out the possible use of surface-to-air missiles to shoot down an unwanted guest. But what are the consequences? The downing of a manned aircraft will automatically mean armed aggression, but the constant escalation by Russia cannot go unpunished. We have previously encountered the precedents of the downing of an American drone over the Black Sea and the downing of a fighter jet with crew over Syria by Turkey. These cases did not lead to serious conflicts, but if the U.S. or Russian crews were injured, the consequences could be very serious. Every month, the number of contacts in NATO airspace is growing, and if a political solution to this problem is not found, it could explode at any time, both literally and figuratively. Allies around the world, from the Pacific Ocean to the Baltic Sea, face the challenge of direct confrontation. The Su-24MR incident may be another straw that eventually overflows the cup of patience. At the same time, NATO must demonstrate its readiness to protect its members by sending clear signals that further provocations are unacceptable. Any unlawful interference in the airspace can be a reason for a serious response, but so far the skies over the Baltic continue to be much more turbulent than its waters and claim a possible place to start World War III along with Taiwan, although this is a topic for a new video. That's all for today, but the discussion of this air battle is just beginning. I'm waiting for your comments to analyze this unusual incident by the facts, so please comment below the video. We always have fun here, and if you've watched this far, don't forget to like it. Also, watch other videos on the channel to learn more about the latest military equipment and military affairs, and check out the subscribe button so you don't miss new videos. See you soon.